All right, let's kick things off with today's daily financial news roundup. We've got a lot to cover, so let's dive right in. First up, mortgage rates. They're down for the fifth week straight. 6.85% is the latest number.
Still hovering pretty close to that 25-year high, though.
Right, not exactly what potential home buyers were hoping for. And it's taking an average of 57 days for homes to sell.
Yeah, it's been 5 years since we've seen homes sit on the market that long.
So not exactly a buy now signal yet. What about the Fed? What role are they playing in all this?
Well, their pause on rate cuts is definitely adding to the uncertainty in the market. Nobody's quite sure what's coming next.
Makes sense that potential buyers might be hesitant then, waiting for things to settle down a bit. Okay, let's talk Bitcoin. It just broke $98,000 for the first time this week, topped out just shy of $99,000 intraday. Anything in particular driving this crypto surge?
Interesting timing, isn't it? It comes just as the SEC seems to be easing up a bit on crypto enforcement. They're folding their dedicated crypto unit into a broader cyber fraud team.
So is that a sign the SEC is getting more comfortable with crypto or just changing their approach to regulation?
Hard to say for sure, but it's definitely got some analysts buzzing.
Ret Capital, for instance, is pointing to a bullish divergence. They think if Bitcoin can hold above, let's say, $97,700, we could see prices keep climbing.
And Ali Martinez is watching $97,533 as a key resistance level.
Right, if it breaks through that, we could see even more upside. Definitely something to keep an eye on. All right, shifting gears to a company making some big moves, Alibaba. Their stock is up over 8% today after a strong Q3 earnings report,
And they've been aggressively buying back their own stock.
to the tune of $1.3 billion just last quarter, right? On top of the $10 billion they already spent on buybacks in the first half of the fiscal year.
It's a bold move, and it's shrunk their share count by 5% in just 9 months. Shows confidence in their future growth.
Definitely a signal to the market. While we're on the topic of stocks, let's do a quick rundown of some others that are on investors' radar today. What are we seeing besides Alibaba?
Well, there's a lot of chatter about Rivian, New Holdings, the always steady Walmart, and of course Tesla.
We can check back on those a bit later, but for now, let's jump across the pond to the UK. Energy bills are back in the headlines.
Always a hot topic over there. This time, it's the energy regulator, Ofgem. They're proposing a major shakeup to how standing charges are structured. They say they're trying to give consumers more choice, but the plan is getting slammed by critics.
Standing charges are already a sore spot for a lot of people. Feels like you're paying a fee just for having the service, whether you actually use any energy or not. So what is Ofgem proposing?
Well, they're talking about a two-tier system. Basically, energy companies would offer two options, one with a standing charge, one without.
Sound good in theory.
But the catch is, the tariff without a standing charge would have a much higher unit price for the energy you actually use.
So is it really giving people more choice or just shifting the costs around?
That's what charities and energy suppliers are arguing. They're saying it won't actually make bills more affordable and could even end up costing vulnerable customers more if they choose the wrong option.
Right, it's not addressing the real issue, which is the high cost of energy itself. Okay, enough about energy bills. Let's move on to something more exciting, new tech. Apple just released their latest iPhone, the 16e.
This one's all about bringing Apple's AI features to a wider audience. It's priced lower than their flagship models.
Smart move. AI is the buzzword right now, but not everyone can afford to shell out for the top-of-the-line phones. But is AI enough to get people to upgrade? I mean, we're still waiting for that killer AI app that everyone needs.
That's the big question, right? How much do consumers actually value AI on their phones?
Only time will tell if it's a game changer for Apple sales. Speaking of tech that could disrupt industries, what's the latest on quantum computing? Microsoft's been making some waves in that space.
They just unveiled a new chip called the Majorana 1. They're claiming it's going to fast-track the development of powerful quantum computers.
And not just any quantum computers. They're talking about machines capable of solving real-world, industrial-scale problems. And get this, they say it'll happen in years, not decades.
Ambitious, to say the least. Most experts think practical quantum computing is still a long way off.
It's certainly a bold claim. It does feel like we're on the cusp of something big, though. A technological revolution, maybe.
Could be. Now let's come back down to earth for a bit. Former President Trump and his tariffs are back in the news.
Oh, right, the tariffs. What's the latest on that?
The Federal Reserve is warning that those tariffs could lead to higher prices for American consumers.
That's not exactly a shock. Tariffs often end up hurting consumers the most.
Exactly. And there's a lot of other uncertainty in the economy right now, too. The Fed's minutes also highlighted concerns about policy uncertainty, including immigration and fiscal issues.
No wonder the Fed's being so cautious about cutting rates. They're in a tough spot. Okay, time for something a little more fun. Let's talk James Bond.
The future of 007 is now in Amazon's hands. With their purchase of MGM Studios, they've got creative control of the franchise.
And Jeff Bezos is already stirring the pot.
Oh, yeah. He's on social media asking everyone who they think should be the next Bond. The internet is going wild with speculation.
That's a casting decision that's going to make headlines around the world. All right, back to the world of tech. But this time, the potential downsides. What about the threat to critical infrastructure?
You're talking about the risks posed by quantum computing, right?
Exactly. As these quantum computers get more powerful, they could be used to crack the encryption that protects all sorts of vital systems, from banking networks to power grids, everything we rely on in the digital world.
It's a scary thought, and we don't know exactly when it might happen. It could be years away, it could be decades, but the threat is real.
So what can we do about it?
Yeah.
Are we just at the mercy of this quantum threat?
Thankfully, no. There are a lot of smart people working on new encryption methods that will be resistant to quantum attacks. Post-quantum cryptography, they call it.
Sounds like we're in a race against time, though. We need to develop these new security measures before the quantum computers get too powerful.
It's a huge undertaking. We're talking about upgrading everything from our phones to the control systems in power plants and hospitals. It's a massive challenge.
A technological arms race with incredibly high stakes. If we fail to stay ahead of the curve on this, the consequences could be disastrous. Okay, let's switch gears for a minute. We've got to talk about this news from the biopharma world. ACELYRIN just confirmed that they received an unsolicited acquisition offer from Concentrap Biosciences.
Interesting timing. They're already in the process of merging with Alumis Inc.
That's going to make things complicated.
The ACELYRIN board has a tough decision to make. They've got to figure out what's best for their shareholders. Could get messy.
Definitely something to watch. And last but not least, we've got to have at least one Elon Musk headline in every news roundup, right?
Of course. His company, X, the one formerly known as Twitter, just got hit with a $1.42 million fine in Brazil.
What did they do this time?
They didn't comply with some court orders related to misinformation. They failed to remove a profile that was accused of spreading fake news and didn't hand over user data when they were asked.
Another case of a social media giant clashing with the government trying to regulate content. It's becoming a familiar story.
It really highlights the tension between these platforms and governments all over the world. Content moderation and data sharing are huge issues. And as technology keeps evolving, it's only going to get more complicated.
Let's end on a more positive note. What's going on in the sports world?
The International Olympic Committee just announced a long-term partnership with TCL, the global technology company. They'll be an official sponsor all the way through the 2032 Olympics.
Wow, that's a big deal for TCL. The Olympics are a massive global event.
They'll be providing all sorts of technology for the games. Everything from the TVs and appliances in the Olympic Village to digital displays at all the venues.
Sounds like they'll be pretty involved.
It's a win-win for both sides. TCL gets to showcase their tech on a global stage, and the IOC gets a partner to help them enhance the experience for athletes and fans.
Makes sense. Okay, we've got one last story for you today, and it's a real head-scratcher. KFC is leaving Kentucky.
I know, it sounds crazy. Kentucky Fried Chicken leaving Kentucky.
What's the reasoning behind that?
It looks like they're following a trend. Texas has become a real magnet for corporate headquarters lately. Their business-friendly policies and lower taxes are attracting a lot of companies.
So it's a financial decision at the end of the day. It's a win for Texas, but it's got to be tough for Kentucky to see a company so closely associated with their state pack up and leave.
You have to wonder what Colonel Sanders would think about it all.
I bet he'd have a finger-licking good take on the situation. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from mortgage rates and Bitcoin to quantum computing and corporate relocations. It's been a wild ride through the world of finance and business.
And it doesn't look like things are going to slow down anytime soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for another edition of the Daily Financial News Roundup. We'll be back next time with more insights and analysis on all the latest happenings.
See you then. All right, welcome back to the show. Let's jump back in with the story that's causing some turbulence in the world of aviation, Boeing, and former President Trump.
Seems like the former president is not happy with Boeing. They're behind schedule on delivering the new Air Force One planes.
Those plans have been in the works for a while now. What's the holdup?
It seems like another case of government contracting gone wrong. Delays, cost overruns, the whole 9 yards. Building these complex aerospace projects, it's not easy.
And with former President Trump, well, he's never been one to shy away from speaking his mind.
You're telling me he's already talking about looking at other options, though switching to Airbus? Probably not going to happen. Politically, that would be a tough sell.
Sticking with an American company is definitely the safer bet. But this whole thing, it's not a good look for Boeing. They've had a rough couple of years.
Last year was especially bad, their worst financial performance since 2020. And it's not just their commercial aircraft division. They've had problems with some of their defense programs, too.
Hopefully they can turn things around. Speaking of companies facing scrutiny, Elon Musk's X, the one formerly known as Twitter, just got hit with a big fine in Brazil.
Yeah, 8.1 million reais, which is about $1.42 million. What was the issue there?
X refused to remove a profile that was accused of spreading misinformation, and they wouldn't hand over the user's registration data.
Classic Musk, pushing back against what he sees as censorship.
Probably. And his relationship with the Brazilian Supreme Court justice who issued the fine, let's just say it hasn't been very friendly. He even called the judge a dictator at one point.
Bold move, even for Elon Musk.
It was. But in the end, X did comply with the court orders. They restricted the accounts, appointed a local representative, and even paid some outstanding fines.
Even Musk has to bow to legal pressure sometimes.
Seems that way. This whole case, though, it really shows how governments around the world are grappling with this issue of misinformation on social media. And they're starting to get more aggressive about enforcing their laws.
All right, let's move on to some good news from the world of sports.
The International Olympic Committee and TCL, the tech company, just announced a long-term partnership. They'll be working together all the way through the 2032 Olympics.
That's a huge win for TCL. What's the scope of the partnership?
TCL is going to be providing a wide range of technology for the Games. Everything from televisions and home appliances for the Olympic Village to all the digital displays at the venues.
Sounds like they'll be involved in just about every aspect.
Yeah.
What's the strategy behind a deal like this?
Well, it's a mutually beneficial arrangement, right? For TCL, it's a chance to showcase their technology on a global stage, get their brand out there. And for the IOC, it's a way to improve the experience for athletes and fans, and of course, generate some revenue to support the Olympic movement.
Everyone wins. Okay, let's circle back to that story that had us all scratching our heads. KFC leaving Kentucky.
As strange as it sounds, Kentucky Fried Chicken is moving their U.S. headquarters from Louisville, Kentucky to Plano, Texas.
Why would they do that? What's the appeal of Texas?
Well, it's been happening a lot lately. Texas has become a hub for corporate headquarters. They've got business-friendly policies, lower taxes, a strong and growing economy. A lot of companies are finding it more advantageous to do business in Texas than in other states.
So it comes down to money. A gain for Texas, but Kentucky's probably not thrilled about this. KFC is pretty closely tied to Kentucky's identity.
I'm sure Colonel Sanders would have something to say about it. This whole move, it really highlights this trend of corporate migration and the impact it can have on communities.
Makes you wonder, if KFC can leave Kentucky, is nothing sacred anymore?
Big questions. All right, that wraps up our mid-show update. We'll be right back after a short break with more stories and analysis.
All right, welcome back to the Daily Financial News Roundup. Let's get back to tech for a minute. We talked a bit about quantum computing earlier, but I think it's worth digging a little deeper into the potential risks.
Yeah, absolutely. Experts are getting more and more worried about the impact quantum computing could have on our critical infrastructure.
What exactly are they concerned about?
Well, the big fear is that a powerful enough quantum computer could be used to break the encryption that protects our most sensitive systems. We're talking about banking networks, power grids, communication systems, national security infrastructure, all kinds of things.
So basically, anything that relies on digital security could be vulnerable.
Exactly. The encryption we use now, it's secure against regular computers, but it might not stand a chance against a sophisticated quantum computer.
Kind of a scary thought.
Yeah.
So what can we do about it? Are we just sitting here waiting for a quantum doomsday?
Not exactly. There are already researchers working on new types of encryption that will be able to withstand quantum attacks. It's called post-quantum cryptography, or sometimes quantum-resistant cryptography.
So it's a race against time then. We need to develop these new security measures before quantum computers get too powerful.
That's the challenge. And it's not just about developing the technology, it's about implementing it. We're talking about upgrading practically every system, every device, every network. It's a massive undertaking.
Sounds like it's going to require a lot of cooperation, too. Scientists, tech companies, governments, everyone's going to have to work together on this.
Absolutely. The stakes are incredibly high. If we don't get this right, the consequences could be really bad.
Let's hope we're up to the task. All right, let's move on to something a little less heavy. Remember that story about KFC leaving Kentucky?
Oh, yeah. Hard to believe Kentucky Fried Chicken moving out of Kentucky.
It really does seem strange. But it's happening. They're packing up their U.S. headquarters in Louisville and heading to Plano, Texas.
It is kind of a head-scratcher at first, but when you think about it, it's part of a bigger trend. Texas has become a real hotspot for corporate headquarters in recent years.
What's the draw? Why are so many companies moving to Texas?
It's a lot of things. Texas has business-friendly policies, lower taxes, and their economy is strong and growing. A lot of companies are finding it makes more financial sense to be in Texas than in other states.
So, bottom line, it's a money thing. Good for Texas, I guess, but it's got to be a bit of a blow to Kentucky. KFC is kind of a big part of their identity.
Yeah, it's a bit of a cultural loss, for sure.
Makes you think, in today's world, with companies moving around all the time, is anything really sacred anymore?
Good question. Well, that brings us to the end of today's daily financial news roundup. We covered a lot of ground, from mortgage rates and Bitcoin to quantum computers and Kentucky Fried Chicken leaving Kentucky.
It's always something in the world of finance and business. Thanks for joining us today. We'll be back again next time with more news and analysis to help you make sense of it all.
See you next time.